الحمد لله الواحد الأحد الفرد الصمد الذي لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد صلاة شاملة تامة كاملة عامة عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إن تشاء أو إن شئت سهلا. اللهم آمين. أما بعد إخوتي أحبتي بالله, my dear brothers and sisters, barakallahu fikum for alhamdulillah having me in this beautiful masjid once again. My journey to Malaysia has come to an end because tomorrow after Fajr I have to go back to Spain all the way, inshallah ta'ala, to my home country. And I was thinking that today, with this time and age, with this technology, etc., it takes about 16 hours total to reach Spain or to come from Spain to Kuala Lumpur, to Malaysia. So we get tired, we complain that the flight is too long, etc. But we need to think about somebody that came to Malaysia and came to this land in the Middle Ages in the 14th century, who's the great traveler, explorer, Ibn Battuta, rahmatullah alayh, who left the port city of Tangier in the utmost or northern part of Morocco, and he left to go for Hajj. He left initially with the intention to go for Hajj, but his journey, instead of taking probably a year, because back then Hajj was almost 6 months to go there and 6 months to come back, his journey took 20 years. He came back home after 20 years, because from Al-Hijaz in Arabia, he went to Egypt, he went to Damascus, he went to Baghdad, he went to so many different regions and countries, and he ended up coming all the way to this archipelago, to what's today Malaysia and Indonesia, and he talks about it in his Rihla. He has this beautiful book, his chronicles or his diaries of his exploring, travel or journey. And this Rihla is probably translated to English, you can read it in English. And when he talks about this land and the beautiful people of Malaysia, he talks about how they are God-loving, God-fearing people, very generous. And he talks about so many things that happened to him here. Think about it. Back then, almost 100 years before Marco Polo, they talk about Marco Polo from Italy, etc. Almost 100 years before Marco Polo, we have this huge traveler who's Ibn Battuta. He came all the way from the other side of the earth in order to visit his brothers and sisters. And if we scratch the surface, we'll find that the connections and the links between the two sides of the Islamic world are beyond our imagination. Think about the Silk Road that used to connect, this land through India, through Minor Asia or Central Asia, and all the way to Timbuktu in nowadays Mali, and also Senegal in sub-Saharan Africa. The Ummah, the Islamic world, has always been connected, brothers and sisters, without frontiers, without borders, knowing each other and actualizing the message of the Quran, which comes with the demand and the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to know each other. لِتَعَارَفُوا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that He created us from one man, one woman, and He made us nations and people, different peoples, in order to, one of the maqasid of khalqullah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the objectives, the goals for which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us is to know each other. And to know each other, we need to recognize each other. We need to have humbleness with each other. We have to transcend, go beyond our languages, go beyond our skin color, go beyond our differences, and see what brings us together, which is this beautiful brotherhood that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has planted in our hearts. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً. The believers are nothing except brothers. إِنَّمَا أَدَاتُ تَوْكِيدٍ وَحَصْرٍ. In Arabic, إِنَّمَا means they are absolutely nothing but. except brothers. And we are, alhamdulillah, united in this masjid as brothers in this beautiful and blessed night of Ramadan. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from us our fasting, our siyam, and our qiyam. Allahumma ameen. Now, I go back to Spain, and I'm going to tell you very quickly in very summed up terms a little bit about the history of Islam in the 20th and 21st century in Spain. Now, after we talked about in previous sessions about the disappearing almost of Islam in Spain after 1,000 years of splendor, of radiant light that was shining in Europe. And it was brought down and it disappeared after the falling of Granada. But the falling of Granada is not the end. People think that 1492, when Granada was surrendered under some terms, and the terms were that the Muslims in Granada were to remain in Granada and were to be completely respected, and their masjids, their salat, their garments, etc., everything is going to be respected. The capitulations of Granada, this is a document that was signed by the two kings, the king and queen, Isabel and Fernando, Isabel of Castile and Fernando of Aragon, with the last king of Granada. I'm going to surrender to you and give you the keys of Granada, but you are to honor these terms. Those terms were not honored. After a few years, the people of Granada were expelled, and the persecution of Muslims started and was even more brutal with the Inquisition. And people, after some time, Muslim people were forced to live as Muslims underground. They had to hide their Islam. And they lived as Moriscos. The Moriscos in Spain were people that were forced either to convert to Catholicism or to outwardly live as Catholics, but at home live as Muslims. And these Moriscos even developed their own code of communication. Have you heard about the writing called Al-Khamiado? Al-Khamiado. Kha is a J in English, so it's spelled as Al-Jamiado. Yeah? Al-Khamiado comes from the Arabic word Al-A'jamiyya, which means the non-Arabic language. Al-Khamiado are texts written in Arabic, but the content is Spanish. Spanish written in Arabic. So they would write text explaining fiqh, for example, explaining wudu, explaining salat, explaining sawm, the fasting of Ramadan, etc., to people that were still retaining their Islam. They would explain to them everything in Spanish, but with Arabic script, in order for the Inquisition not to have access to what they were saying. And we have beautiful texts of Al-Khamiado, for example, the text of Muhammad de la Vega. Muhammad de la Vega, the name is composed, and we have the text of El Mancebo de Arevalo, this young man that we don't know the identity of him, but we know he existed because of his writing. So we have a very rich history, even after the falling of Granada, that extended up until 1610, 1611, when the king Philip of Spain expelled the last Muslims of Spain to northern Africa and to other regions. And Felipe of Spain gives his name, or this country takes its name from the name of this enemy of Muslims in Spain, which is the Philippines. Because the Philippines was, had a huge Muslim community. They were converted to Catholicism, and the few Muslims that remained have a Spanish name. The Moros in the Philippines. Like the Muslims in Spain were called Moros, the Moors in Spain. So after that, for 500 years, Islam probably completely disappeared until the beginning of the 20th century. One of the first people that talked about Islam, etc., is considered the father of Andalusia, the region called Andalusia, Blas Infante, very important man, Blas Infante. He wrote about the heritage of Muslims in Spain, and he declared himself as a Muslim and went to a very small town near Marrakesh in Morocco called Agmat. Agmat. And what is in Agmat? In Agmat is the tomb of the last king of Seville, Al-Mu'tamid ibn Abbad from Seville, and his wife, Ar-Rumaykiya. Yeah, they have both their tombs up until today. They're buried together. They lived this history of love, this husband and wife, and they were expelled from Seville, the last king of Seville, and he died in Agmat and was buried there. So Blas Infante went to Agmat to declare his shahada there, and he went back to Spain and was killed in Spain. He was executed by the Franco military coup. They were fascists in Spain that executed him. Huge history, very deep history. And then with 1939, Spain became a dictatorship. Up until 1973. From 39 to 73, it was a dictatorship. This means that no other religion was allowed in Spain except Catholicism. Spain declared itself as 100% Catholic. If you were Muslim, Jew, or any other religion, you were exposed to going even to jail. Up until 1967, which is the first law that declared religious freedom. You could declare yourself as a Muslim. And in 1967, 69, that kind of period, a lot of Muslim students came from especially Syria and Palestine. And they came to study in Granada. Muslims were non-existent. You have very few Muslims in Spain, but you have a very tiny community that would be, this mosque would be too big for them, probably back then. And in Granada, they were studying medicine, pharmacy, etc. And they were learning Islam amongst themselves in some apartment. And from there, they founded the first masjid, Masjid Umar, which still stands in Granada. And from there, they were, they were sent to different cities in Spain, and they started their own masjids, and that's how Islam started to revive in the 70s and 80s. Also in Granada and other cities, you had new converts with the hippie trend in Granada. People were starting to explore new religions, different religions, and they came back to Islam. And you have still Muslim communities, Spanish Muslim communities established in Granada, Cordoba, and other cities in Spain. And alhamdulillah, now in the 90s, a huge community came from Morocco and other countries in order to work in construction and in the fields, in agriculture. And now we have their kids who declare themselves as Spanish Muslim community. And now the number of Muslims in Spain is almost 2.5 million Muslims scattered in different regions, especially in Catalonia, around Barcelona, Madrid, and the south in Andalusia. And we have a lot of challenges and a lot of projects for the Muslim community, teaching projects and projects for the youth, inshallah. And we count on our brothers and sisters in the whole of Malaysia to, inshallah, give a helping hand in pushing, inshallah, these projects in Spain. Barakallahu feekum for having me here. I couldn't think of a better place, a better building to talk about the history of Muslims in Spain from the beginning. We started until, we reached the 21st century, and inshallah, in coming visits, we can expand on these issues, and we can explain in more depth and more detail the history of Muslims in Islam in Spain. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this masjid, bless the people that take care of this masjid, and bless the people that come to the masjid. And أسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يبارك فيكم وأن يتقبل منا ومنكم صيام رمضان وقيامه وصالح الأعمال، وأن يحيينا على الإسلام ويميتنا على الشهادة والإيمان ويلحقنا بالصالحين، اللهم آمين. صلى الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يقوينا، اللهم إنا ضعفاء فقوينا، وإنا أذلاء فأعزنا، وإنا فقراء فأغننا، واغننا بحلالك عن حرامك، واغننا بفضلك عما سواك. اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا واعف عنا، اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم ارحم والدينا وارحم من علمنا، وارحم جميع المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات يا أرحم الراحمين يا رب العالمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون، وسلام على المرسلين، والحمد لله رب العالمين، وجزاكم الله خير وبارك الله فيكم. جزاكم الله.